Well, and you can tell who prepared and who didn't. They all have notes. I was writing stuff down as they were talking, so that's identifies me as a blogger, I think, more than as a journalist. So I'm going to just try and go over this pretty briefly because I'd rather hear from you and get questions and get a discussion going. So I'm the host, curator, reporter, blogger, whatever you call it, for Humanosphere. It's a name I came up with because all the good ones were taken. And it's run by KPLU/NPR, and it's a pilot project, and it's temporary, and if it doesn't succeed, it goes away. So it's interesting for me. I started out, as they said, as a newspaper reporter at the Seattle PI, and then they decided to shrink staff somewhat and go online only. And so I floated around for a year, which was pretty interesting for me, and I was exploring, trying to do this myself, trying to start a global health and development website, and I was trying to find money for it, and I learned a lot just by trying to figure out how to be an entrepreneurial journalist and a new media journalist, and I'm still learning. And so they asked me to come speak about new media and multimedia because the first and second choices wouldn't come. And so I'm still learning, and I think it's fun, it's exhausting. Journalism's in turmoil. Joanne says it's getting better. I don't know. I mean, it's getting different, and there's some good and some bad to it. So what I wanted to just go through was basically how what I think I'm doing, what your role is in it, because the main thing that's different about blogging, I just hate that word, but that's what I am, I guess. And the main thing that makes it different is that it's an opportunity for interaction and feedback. A lot more than when I was at the newspaper. We did have a website, and people had comments, mostly crazy, at the PI. And what I would like to do is try and build a dialogue here in Seattle, and then hopefully have it catch on, and my site be one of the sites where the global health and development community can really hash things out. Because frankly, I think the discussion around global health and development right now is too precious. And it's too careful, and everybody's, like Jim says, a lot of it comes off like press releases. It's all like the Children's Defense Fund late-night TV commercial. And, you know, there's a lot of fights, there's a lot of arguments, there's controversy. It's a human endeavor. And so I'd like to just see it become a lot more like other things in the news, you know, where it's really discussed, and then I think the audience will broaden with that. And I just, so I'm hoping to do that. I'm trying to make my blog, news site, whatever I'm supposed to call it, edgy, irreverent, hopefully insightful. I've already upset the Gates Foundation, so, you know, I'm off to a good start, I think. So one of the other things, and this, so what I'd like to do is, I had this whole presentation focused on showing you going through the website, which can't do. So I'll try and describe what I've been doing, and we can talk hopefully about how you would like to see it improve. I mean, that's again what the benefit of the new media approach is, that it's ideally very interactive. And you, as the community of readers and listeners, can affect it. And it is just starting, so I'm open to a lot of ideas. So some of the stories I was going to show you that I've been writing about to try and get things through here is. This week is the Millennium Development Goals Summit. in New York. I don't know, maybe you all know what MDGs stand for and what they are. Most people don't. And so I wrote several articles sort of just trying to draw in the people who might not know exactly what they were. And so I had sort of a funny one that was just, I went through what the symbols all meant, and I don't know if you remember what the symbols look like, but I start off saying the first one is, I don't know if it's, I think it's child mortality, reduced, it's decreased poverty, it's got a bowl, like a steaming bowl of oatmeal. The next one was maybe child mortality, and you know, it's serious, women's empowerment, or reduced maternal mortality. And then the next one I said was decapitated teddy bear, and that's because that's what it looked like to me. And then, so you try to have a little bit of humor, and then you get people in to read about it, and it went into an interview with Jeff Sachs about why these are important, why it's a shame that most Americans don't know anything about it, and a little bit about why Americans don't know, at least Jeff Sachs' idea of why Americans don't know much about it and what the problem is. And so it was sort of a joking way of trying to get people to pay attention and get into it. I did a story recently on maternal mortality, the evidence for it, which is a big part of the discussion this week. And some Seattle researchers last spring came out with some data that said the estimates, or maternal mortality estimates, were much too high, and that, in fact, maternal mortality had gone down by about 30%. And these guys in Seattle got castigated and criticized by a lot of people who said that the World Health Organization figures were the right ones, and it got to the point even where advocacy groups and NGOs involved in maternal mortality asked the Lancet not to publish the data because it would hurt fundraising and the lobbying to make maternal mortality the issue. And they're all good people, I'm sure. And you know, they were trying to make sure that it didn't look too much progress had happened. Anyway, so WHO then last week came out with revised figures that pretty much agree with what the Seattle researchers came up. These were Chris Murray and guys at the Institute for Health Metrics. And so, kind of boring, really, you know, a data story. So I wrote the headline, World Health Organization Eats Crow. And I hoped people would read that. And actually the World Health Organization did, and they responded. And I got a really nice response from one of the researchers explaining how they changed their data. And I posted that. Joanne mentioned mental health, and it is very, well, it's maybe, well, I actually wrote about it a while ago because I'd run across these two researchers, psychologists here at the University of Washington who work on PTSD and are trying to show that it can be treated very easily and cheaply in the developing world, and they're working with some guys at Johns Hopkins and Duke who've been trying to show that mental illness can be treated cheaply and easily or resourced settings. Anyway, and so I just thought that was very interesting. I didn't know very much about it, and fortunately, because blog posts are brief, I don't have to know much. I can just sort of say things and then link to things. And but anyway, and I wrote, the headline for that story is the most neglected disease in global health, and you know, so again, it's just a very brief thing, sort of pointing out that here's something that, like Joanne says, it's not on the Millennium Development Goals, and I just point people to this issue, and it's a brief mention with a lot of links. Other things I've written about. Education really makes a big difference in women's. Other things I've written about, education really makes a big difference in women's health and children's health. There was research on that. I just today posted something on Hillary Clinton is today announcing a new initiative to improve wood stove, you know, getting better stoves out to everybody. I think there's kind of a goofiness to the whole thing, but it's you know, that's news today. New York Times had a story saying it was going to happen, and that's very interesting. And air pollution from primitive stoves is unbelievably detrimental to both health and actually climate change. So it's actually an amazing thing. And so that's a global, local connection right there. Written about mobile phones, Grameen Foundation. There's a lot of microfinance activity here. One story I recently wrote about that I thought was really interesting was in preparation for the Millennium Development Goals, there were demonstrations all around the world, anti-poverty demonstrations all around the world. Millions of people took part in it over this past weekend. There was one in Vancouver, British Columbia. There was one in Portland. There was nothing in Seattle. And so I just thought that was interesting. So I posted a story saying, why not? I haven't got an answer yet, but I just thought, I don't know what that means. I just thought it was odd. On the dialogue front, I wrote a story a while ago in which I noted that Chris Elias, who's the head of PATH, had come up with the term microbicide and gave him a lot of credit for it and made him nervous, and so he wrote a rebuttal saying he shouldn't be given that much credit, which I thought was interesting. And so anyway, there's a lot of dialogue. I would like to get humanosphere.org, as many of you, looks like Roger wants me to stop. You want me to stop? Yeah, okay. Two other things I just want to say. I thought this was interesting. This is a book someone told me to read to learn how to do this, Digital Journalist Handbook. And it's got a lot of interesting stuff. Again, it sort of says things like, it tells you how to do an inverted pyramid, which is sort of like saying, you know, start sentences with, you know, words. I thought this was funny. You can't see it. But in the middle of the book, on page 129, is a huge picture of a USB connection. So that's about where we're at with technology journalists. The only two other things that I really want to say is that there's a lot of problems with how journalism is funded. That's what got the Gates Foundation mad at me, is that I was writing about the awkwardness of how we get funded to do this. There's not enough coverage in global health. A lot of organizations like the Gates Foundation want to get more coverage for this, so they're funding media. NPR, who I work for now, gets funding from the Gates Foundation. It's something the public should pay attention to because it can be very awkward. It can be great. Richard deals with this issue, and it's kind of where everything's headed. And if the public doesn't pay attention and we just assume we know what we're doing, usually bad things happen. So I think the funding, we haven't really talked about it, but I think the funding of the media is something the public should pay a lot more attention to. So I'll stop on that.